I'm Richard Gordon, author and founder of Quantum Touch. I want to tell you what happened to me back in 1980. I woke up one morning with severe flu symptoms, gurgling chest cough, bones aching, high fever, sore throat. I felt absolutely miserable. My head hurt. And I had just attended a workshop, a seminar, where the information said that all physical illness had an emotional foundation, emotional causes. And I didn't know if this was true or not, but I thought I'd put it to a test. So I crawled out of bed, wrapped myself in a blanket, sat on the floor, and thought about, what am I upset about? And I couldn't find anything. In fact, it was curious, but I couldn't even feel any emotion. I was completely numb at that time. And then I started thinking about my childhood. I thought about everything I could think of, and I had no emotion about anything. Suddenly it dawned on me that a friend had intentionally said some things that I felt very humiliated about. And all of a sudden, I had access to my emotion. I could feel anger and sadness and rage and all kinds of feelings, the humiliation itself. And I vented for about 8 or 10 minutes. I let myself feel the intensity of these feelings. And I felt a little better, so I got up, took a shower, got dressed, drove downtown Santa Cruz where I lived at the time. And I was sitting in the sun having a cup of coffee. And halfway through my coffee, I thought, oh my God, I was sick this morning. I was expecting to stay sick for a week based on how bad I felt that morning, and all symptoms were gone within an hour of the time that I felt the flu symptoms coming on. This led to my primary discovery of self-created health, the fact that it actually did function that way. Maybe not in all cases, but it really did work. In the next 2 to 3 years, I figured out a series of non-invasive questions to ask people. And by asking people these questions, we could find emotional causes very often. In fact, it's probably somewhere in the high 90s how often we're able to find a concise emotional cause. I'll ask these 8 or 10 questions that I have over and over again, pumping more information from a person until I have 30 or 40 answers from them. And in these 30 or 40 answers, they'll give all kinds of interesting descriptions about the condition, how it affects their life, how it keeps them from doing things, and so forth. And when we reflect these questions back to the person as an emotional circumstance, we find that they'll fit like a glove. All 30 out of 30 or 40 out of 40 will completely match up with an emotional situation. And then when we explore that emotional situation, what do you do with those emotions? The person is likely to say, they are the feelings I don't want to experience. I'll hand them the list with all the check marks and say, well, maybe you're feeling these feelings as physical symptoms instead of experiencing them as direct emotions. Well, that's how far I was able to take the work around 1983-84. But I didn't know how to move the process all the way through to the other side. Back in 83-84, I understood it was important to do release work because that's what I had done to heal myself, but it wasn't enough. And it took me an additional 25 years of thinking about this problem to realize the rest of the steps that were necessary to help a person get to the other side. So I'll briefly let you know what those other steps are. The first step, of course, was the discovery. What is the emotional cause? The second step is the release process, and there are specific releases for hurt, for anger, for shame, for guilt, and so forth, that you need to understand how you actively process and release the intensity of these emotions. If you don't do the release step, which is the second step of the process, the third step of the process becomes dangerous. And I don't recommend this process. If you don't know what the first cause is, the emotional cause, and you haven't done the release, I do not recommend you jump to the third step. And many people get themselves in trouble and give a bad name to the idea of looking for emotional cause, because the third step can often be used just to beat yourself up. The third step is the insight that you did this to yourself. And I totally understand people's rage at suggesting you caused that condition to yourself. How dare you blame the victim for their condition? Or you could see it from the other side, that if you are able to actually transform the condition, how wonderful it is that you could actually take responsibility and utilize that in a powerful way to heal and transform your life. So the third step is the insight that you did this to yourself. Oh my God. That is very powerful. And you don't have to do it for very long, but you need to let the emotion in. I hurt myself. This automatically leads to the fourth step, which only needs to be, 5 or 6 minutes, which is feeling the depth of remorse that you hurt yourself. From the remorse, now we're ready for a forgiveness process. The remorse is kind of like pulling a bow back, and if you pull the bow all the way back as far as you possibly can, the arrow will go a long way. But if you only pull the bow back half an inch, and just say, I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you, thank you, there's no responsibility here, and the arrow goes bloop, and it doesn't go anywhere. So the process of remorse is very painful, but it only lasts for a few minutes. The remorse then leads to the fifth step. And the fifth step is self-forgiveness. And the self-forgiveness is so powerful in the way that I came up with a method of doing the process of forgiving yourself, that it leads to what I call explosive self-love. It's not just self-love like I love myself and isn't that nice, but it is explosive, overwhelming self-love, which leads to the seventh step automatically, which is you can't contain that much self-love. And that overwhelming self-love is love of higher self, love of God. God is all that is, infinite, great spirit, however you call that. It becomes a spiritual self-love where you can reach places where you didn't know you were capable of loving that deeply. And here's the kicker. Not only do symptoms disappear, but the people who do this entire process will feel intensely grateful that they had the condition. The understanding becomes the body has the ability to be sick, not as a dysfunction, but a communication from our higher consciousness. The symptom becomes our messenger, our spiritual messenger. And when I've taught workshops, either in person or over teleseminars where people from all different continents can get together, or other instructors are doing it, we see people getting it all the way through. In the first live workshop that I taught, one woman was going on for like 6 or 8 minutes about, I never felt so much love. This is Sunday morning, by the way. On Saturday, I teach all the basic information for the workshop. And on Sunday, we review and strengthen and really come to a deeper understanding of everything. So on Sunday morning, I said, who went through the process all the way? And this woman was explaining, oh my God, I never felt such deep love in my life. I never knew that I could feel so much, and it was so beautiful, and I forgave my father, and all this stuff happened. And I said, well, by the way, what was the condition that triggered all that? And she said, oh, my shoulder hurt. And everybody laughed, because the shoulder wasn't even an issue in her life anymore, but that was the impetus that got her started, wanting to express all the intensity of that emotion. But when she got to the other side, oh, by the way, the shoulder's completely healed, but in its place, I have returned to all that love again that I had dismissed, that I didn't feel anymore, and had the ability to experience that depth of connection to source, to love, and so That's why I say not only do symptoms disappear, but people feel intensely grateful that they had the condition, that the body had the ability to be sick, not as a dysfunction, but a communication to their higher self. So typically in a workshop, we go through the entire material on Saturday. On Sunday, we review. And generally about 1/3 of the class has gone all the way to the other side, and they've processed it out, and they have experienced the symptoms shifting. About 2/3 of the class they know where they are in the process. Some have gone just a little ways, and some have gone almost. They're just right at the point of remorse, and they haven't quite gone through the forgiveness yet. They're right on that edge. And this is a very beautiful thing because everybody can be aware of where they are in the process and how they can get to the other side. I remember teaching in Japan, and one man said to me, he said, I haven't finished the process yet because I feel unforgivable. And I said to him, that's very beautiful, because it takes tremendous courage to get to that place of feeling unforgivable, but now you're ready to go through the next step. And by the end of the workshop, he gave me a big hug and said, thank you. It's like he got his life back again. That's the value of the self-created health, is that not only will the symptoms shift, but we take the love back again. And everybody has the ability to go through this process. I remember a couple of my instructors started doing a co-counseling process with people. And in one case, they worked with a woman who had been depressed for about 7 years, severely depressed. Nothing was helping her get past the depression. So they gave her 2 sessions using the self-created health method. And in the first session, they helped her figure out what she was really angry about. It wasn't for lack of Prozac that she was depressed. It was because she was pissed off. And she found the emotional cause in the first session, and then they gave her homework to process and release that rage that she had been holding for years and years, that she felt she had no right to feel, that she'd get in trouble for feeling these emotions, but she felt them anyway. So in the second session, they helped her get to the insight that, yeah, she carried all this anger around all these years unnecessarily. She could have expressed it. And they felt her feel the remorse and get to the edge of forgiveness. And when she got to that place of forgiveness, she said, I can't do this. I can't get past it. And they said, no, darling, you can do this. We're going to sit with you, and you can do this process. And she started doing the forgiveness process. And all of a sudden, she says, I can do this. I can do this. And she continued the forgiveness process where you just hit that overwhelming self-love. And she caught that wave. And it's not hard to do. It just takes willingness. And in that wave, she got to the other side of the depression. And then everything became sunshine and butterflies for her. She has this overwhelming joy and love that she was able to access again. This provides a map, a simple 7-step map that people can use. And knowing this map shows you exactly where you are. If you've gone through step 1, which is very easy, then you need to do step 2. Some people stay on step 2 for a long time. But when you're ready, you go to step 3 and so forth, all the way down until you've gotten to the other side. I sincerely believe that this is my most important and profound workshop to date. And some final thoughts is the instructors who are teaching self-created health, and I have been discovering over and over again how deeply the self-created health work ties in with quantum touch, and especially the level 2 work. And now we're compiling our insights and discoveries on how to use self-created health in conjunction with quantum touch, and especially the level 2 work. There's overlaps, there's insights to be discovered here. Each one stands alone on itself, but there's a connection and an overreaching way that they can work with one another. Anyway, if you're interested in learning self-created health, I occasionally teach some teleseminars, and we have many instructors around the world who are teaching these workshops as well. And you can look this up at quantumtouch.com. Thank you so much, and I look forward to being in touch with all of you.